Joining me live, Ukraine Ambassador to Australia, Vasyl Myroshnychenko. Thanks for your time. Reaction to this announcement of these more Bushmasters?
I welcome the decision of the Prime Minister and of the government, and it was such a warm meeting that I've seen the footage of Prime Minister and the President, their big hug in a room. It was very friendly, and it really means a lot to me personally, and it means a lot to the Ukrainian people who are dying there on the front lines and who see that support from Australia. Another 30 Bushmasters will be used for a good purpose. It will be used for the transport of the personnel, for the transport of the wounded ones. And that will be a huge contribution to our defense capabilities, to our strengths, and to our ability to repel the Russians from Ukraine.
There was a call for quite a number of months. The counter-offensive is on right now. Was it a bit curious, the timing, waiting until this meeting? Would this have helped more a few weeks ago?
We appreciate every piece of equipment that we get from Australia or from our allies, and we always will be grateful and in debt for that support and assistance. And that support that has been ongoing and coming from Australia, it's been there for the past 16 months. It was launched by the previous government, and then it was continued by the Labour government. And of course, the sooner we can get the equipment, the better it is, because we'll have more armor, more protection. But we appreciate the time it comes and when it comes. And we hope that that assistance will be carried on. And we are in constant talks and meetings with the government.
We're seeing some vision there of the ability of the Bushmaster to withstand some pretty big explosions and so on. Hawkeyes is the other vehicle that you were keen on. It was a no, citing supply chain issues. Everything I've read suggests there are Hawkeyes sitting in the country ready to go. Was this disappointing?
It's just like with NATO. So we wanted to get an invite to NATO, and that was kind of a clear timeline that everybody was expecting. At the same time, we still got a lot out of that summit. And the same with the Hawkeyes. Maybe if it's not possible now, it perhaps will be possible a bit later when some of the issues will be fixed, which are there. So I remain hopeful that we'll be able to get back to discussing potential supply of the Hawkeyes, because they could really be helpful with electronic warfare, with reconnaissance, with air defense systems. So I'm still convinced that the testing ground that Ukraine is offering is a unique opportunity for Australia, and I hope there will be a time when we can get to a discussion about.
Because if it's supply chain issues and we don't want to, deplete our stocks, but we know there are more coming, wouldn't you expect that Australia says, "Well, you really need these right now. We can wait for the other ones." Wouldn't your issue with these a bit more urgent?
I respect the decision of the government. It's if the government decides they cannot do it, they have the right to do it, and all we can do, we can only ask. And of course, we are thankful for what we get, and we will continue campaigning, or we'll continue talking and discussing the ways of how it could be done or how it could be achieved. Because remember, when the war started, we were getting helmets and body armor from some of the countries. And then it all kind of expanded, and we started getting air defense systems and multiple rocket launchers and tanks. And now we're getting long-range missiles, and now we're getting fighter jets. So it all was no at the beginning, but it all has been changing and developing and evolving. And I think that's the resilience of that international coalition of countries which are supporting Ukraine. So I rely on, and we rely on, Australian support. And whatever is provided now is of huge value, of huge help, and more, if anything, comes in the future, and I hope there will be more, that will be saving lives.
One of the shortages in what has been at times a very old-fashioned war has been munition rounds. Did you ask for more from Australia, but they were not available or not provided?
We got the 105 munition in the previous package, which was announced several weeks ago. Of course, 155mm is something which is in high demand globally, and this is what Ukraine is seeking everywhere. We are ready to buy, and the problem is the stockpiles are gone. And I think now we see it even here in Australia, where there are discussions that you should develop your own manufacturing capabilities of those rounds. Because if in times of crisis, as we already now see, defense industry cannot keep up with the demand. So definitely 155mm ammunition is something we are looking for. And if there is an opportunity for Australia to do more and supply them, we'd be thankful.
Is that the biggest thing holding back the current offensive? I mean, how would you describe how it's progressing and what's perhaps stopping faster progress or more progress on the Ukrainian counteroffensive?
No one has attempted to break through the modern fortifications without the support from air. And fighter jets is something which is all missing in this whole scenario, because if you look at the military doctrines of different governments, you don't do counteroffensive without fighter jets and air cover, and we don't have it. And that's the reason why it's so difficult, and Russians are heavily dug in, and we need to have the munitions. That's one of the reasons, by the way, why America has supplied cluster munitions, because will be used for that one specific purpose, to actually break through those front lines, which there are 3 lines of defense. It's all heavily mined. We don't have planes and air and jets, so we have to go through with tanks and ammo we have. But it's extremely challenging and difficult to get through. So we need to have the right tools to do it. And of course, it's not a film, because a lot of people look at this war as if it's an American Hollywood movie, and we all expect a fast win. It's more complicated than that, and many lives are lost.
What are the prospects on fighter jets? There was talk of Australian old fighter jets, one of a better description, that some of them are even just used for target practice. I'm sure you'd say we've got a better use.
We are now pursuing F16 Coalition. There was an agreement between ministers of defense, also announced on the sidelines of the NATO summit. So we now have, if I'm not mistaken, 11 countries which will contribute to our F16 capability, to training pilots and then eventually transferring the platforms to us.
Takes a bit of time.
Takes a bit of a time, and of course, it's all, when you have one platform, this is what you need to focus on. The aircraft that are here, that are of different platforms, they are now in a commercial ownership of an American company. The government does not have any of those left. Of course, there was no official request for those aircraft, but if there is one, we'll be discussing it a bit later.
That's a down-the-path situation. Well, just finally, how closely do you watch the domestic situation in Russia? We had this extraordinary moment where there was a brief moment of what looked like a coup. And on one hand, I suppose you think, if things crumble for Vladimir Putin, does the Russian effort crumble? But then what does he do if he feels like it's his last few days? You know, what drastic move could he pull? So that could be just as concerning.
We just have to look at the rule of Vladimir Putin for the last 23 years. And actually what Putin has managed to achieve during the last 9 years was his invasion of Ukraine, was grabbing Crimea, and now with a large-scale invasion of last year. Because if we look where they started and where we are now, it's 2 different worlds. Russia is now a pariah state. All Russians are now toxic. This is the legacy that Vladimir Putin is leaving. And if we can defeat Russian troops in Ukraine, that will precipitate his collapse, because he cannot justify his objectives or why he sent the troops to get killed in Ukraine. What are they doing there? What are they defending? We are defending our land. We're defending our people. For us, it's existential war. For them, it's an adventure for his will.
But is there a concern that he would do anything to stay in power, and then, of course, the worst thoughts go towards nuclear?
We've seen dictators in the past, in history. We all know they all crumble, and Putin will crumble as well. Of course, the sooner he collapses, the more lives will be saved, and we hope it will be rather sooner than later.
Ambassador, appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.